I'm back and welcome to my bookshelf tour. This is the bookshelf that is in my office, my study in my new house. So we've been living here between like 2.5, 3 years now, and I keep putting this tour off because most of the shelves tend to change behind me, and that's because I only put books I've read on the bookshelves behind me. Everything that I physically own that I haven't read yet goes on my cart, which I will show you as well. So for that reason, I end up reading series, and then if there's not enough room on the shelf, I have to move stuff around to compensate. So that's why it feels like these shelves are always changing, and there is things on the shelf now that I do want to change as well. So I'll point them out as I go through this bookshelf tour. But welcome, grab a cup of tea, buckle up, and let's explore my bookshelves. I think it makes the most sense to start with my to be read cart first. So this is the books that I currently need to read, and I tend to pick them every month on my monthly number generator. We've got here The Foxglove King. We've got the first binding, which I'm quite scared of, so I'm going to move right past it. The Games Gods Play as well. I'm hoping this is an Olympian Gods retelling that I don't hate. And then of course the sequel, A Pirate's Life for Tea, to a cozy fantasy that I enjoyed. You'll also note the stickers that I have on here. So I got a couple of these in Japan, a few of them on Amazon, and I've just collected meme stickers as well. So I like decorating my to be read cart as I find new ones. Moving one shelf down, my cart was looking a little bit lonely because I don't have a huge physical to be read pile. So this is kind of here as a reminder, and it's The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. And I've read this before, and I've read the whole series. So it's here as a reminder that at some point I do intend to do a reread. And there are lots of other books in the series. There's like 5 of these, and they are all thick. So it's there as a reminder, and a reminder only until my mood strikes and I decide that I'm ready for something this big. And then without this teddy bear money tin, it would fall over. So that's my logic here. Behind here, I've got my little post-it note, and that's all of my audiobooks that I plan to read. So again, on my number generator that I use in my monthly to be read videos, I include this and the physical to be read pile on the top shelf. And that's what my number generator chooses for me. Hopefully, because I've refreshed it, I have a decent time with some of these. And again, a lot of the stickers are either memes like Elmo or the cat, or their Studio Ghibli, which I absolutely adore. Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, it's just the best. They are amazing. Then on the last shelf, I've got Brandon Sanderson, and it is embarrassing because I didn't love the Brandon Sanderson Kickstarters that I supported, but I used all the stickers in his release packs, and that makes up the bottom of my to be read cart. So I keep them there as a bit of a memento because I can't really easily peel them off. And then in the background, I've got a whole bunch of Ghibli stickers that I have not stuck on anything yet, so they just live in there. And I've got my Animal Crossing jar as well that is currently, I think, empty. Yeah, I used this in a past Vlogmas to pick out different prompts. So it also lives in here as well. And then of course on the end, I've got my little cat bus down here. So more Ghibli, you can't escape the Ghibli. Now this is the bookshelf that sits behind me whenever I film, and I'll go through it in a second. But on top, I have little figurines. So I've got Tanjiro here from Demon Slayer, and then I've also got Loki, little Loki, obviously from Marvel, but they're so cute and they sit behind me, so if you've spotted them in the background, power to you. As you can see, I keep graphic novels here, and then I also keep mostly romance on this bookshelf as well. They're all brightly coloured, makes me very happy, but some of my favourites have been Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, which is a female-female romance that I really enjoyed. Sadly, I didn't love the last one in the series as much as the first 2, but I still enjoyed all of them. And then I've got Free Ren up here, and this is kind of here even though I didn't love the manga version because I really adored the anime, and it's about an elf and she doesn't age as quickly as humans, so all of the people that she went on an initial quest with have now passed away, and she's now recreating the quest that she did with them and retreading it and going with different people and reminiscing about the people that she knew as well, and understanding the concept of time and how she relates to everyone. So I really like the messages in here, but I didn't quite get the depth from the manga, but I keep it on here because it's such a good story and is like a representation of how much I loved it. I'm also desperately awaiting the next volume of Fence by C.S. Pacat. I've read all 6 volumes here and I am desperate for a sequel. Moving one shelf down now, I've got an Australian author in the corner whose romances I really had a good time with, and then some young adult romances as well that have been fantastic and I haven't wanted to get rid of them. I would say out of this shelf I would probably spotlight this book because It's also by an Australian author and it's also young adult, but if you know me and my reading taste, you know that I don't really read young adult, and this one stood out to me and it was a 5 stars. So I think it's one to try if you want to try this category, because it takes things seriously even though the characters are a bit younger, and I feel like it had a really good grounding to it as well. So this is my recommendation for this shelf. I've got some Juno Dawson here and I really quite like her young adult. I don't really love her memoir or her adult fantasy, unfortunately, and I'm a huge fantasy person, so that's such a surprise, but Clean on this shelf would probably be my favorite. If you talk about young adult, if you're talking about adult on this shelf, this one is my favorite and has been for a very long time, and that is The Art of Racing in the Rain. And I think I've reread this book more than 8 times and it makes me cry every time, and I just love how heartfelt and connected it is. So huge recommendation here. I don't really talk about old favorites very much, but if you're new to my channel or you're just seeing this video for the first time, go out and try this one. And then as far as Tessa Bailey goes, I usually listen to all of her stuff on audio from my local library, and I was just given this for Christmas one year. So in terms of stuff that I don't really necessarily need to keep, eventually I might end up getting rid of this one, but it has been my favorite of her books so far. So like Free Rent, it's kind of just staying there as a representation of, you know, this book was actually pretty good compared to her others. Please forgive the angle, it is hard to get down here, but these are the Lore Olympus graphic novels, and even though I've read all of these, I think I'm throwing the towel in for these at the moment, because even though they're pretty and the storytelling was great at the beginning, I very much lost touch with my enjoyment of these. So eventually, will I get rid of these? Maybe, I'm not sure, but they're so hefty and they're so expensive that I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell them. So maybe I'll just hold on to them. Down here, I've got a bunch of Terry Pratchett books and they are all facing the other way because I never read these as a kid. I should probably put them on Dave's bookshelf or something, because it feels like in my study, they're a little bit wasted. They're not getting appreciated. So I need to move them, I think. So far they've just been filling up space on my bookshelf, and I think it's time that they also moved on. Not as an unhaul, just as I genuinely need to move these to where they'll be appreciated. Okay, so as you can see, a bunch of my Brandon Sanderson books live down here. I don't really want to pull them all off because they are hefty, but the hardcovers do look pretty cool, and this one, I forgot, was actually signed, so that's pretty awesome. Does it annoy anyone else to have like a tiny little gap in the very edge? Because all of these books are so thick, they're not quite thick enough to fully fill up the shelf. Anyway, maybe it's just me. I think I'm just annoyed. You will also notice another favourite fantasy, The Will of the Many, which I found last year and absolutely adored, and this is one of the ones that is in a series that eventually I will move, because obviously this is a Jen Lyons shelf, but she hasn't published anything new, which I'm gonna cry about, so let's not talk about it. And this one's got a sequel coming out at the end of 2025, so this one is going to probably move. I have no idea where to yet because it needs space and there's not enough on this shelf for a sequel to live next to it. In terms of favourites on this shelf, that would definitely be the favourite, even though I've loved all of Jen Lyons' books before. This one, if you haven't read Jen Lyons, is a great place to start because it's a standalone fantasy and it's a dragon heist novel, so would recommend for a fun time. This angle is so narrow that I'm really struggling on where to sit, so hello. This shelf is my dragon representation, if you could not have guessed. We've got Toothless, we've got Spyro, and then we've got a library dragon that was gifted to me. And then on this shelf as well, we've got Rebecca Yarros, which I found quite suitable. I'm pulling this one out because I'm not sure if it's easy to see, but on this shelf of obviously books that I also enjoyed, because I usually keep books that are 4 or 5 stars, this was a 5 stars, a dark academia, like urban fantasy, fantasy set in our world, and it is excellent. I have a recap for it as well before you read the sequel Hellbent, but is there news about any kind of sequel yet to Hellbent? No, there's not, so we will suffer together. Behind me on this shelf is some books that I will probably end up getting rid of. However, books that I intend to keep are the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks, and the Black Prison book is book 1. So I own book 1, 4 and 5, but I own all of them on audiobook. So at least I'm not lacking there in terms of my reread. The ones that I'm thinking of getting rid of though are the Bone Season books, and these are the new covers, but I tried rereading them, I didn't love them, and I feel really bad about it. Are they going to live there and make me feel guilty for a couple of months probably. Only when I need more room on my bookshelf because I buy other things, and I don't buy physical books very much, so they might have a little bit more life on this bookshelf. And I've also got an advanced reader copy of Priory of the Orange Tree, and it's personalized to me by Samantha Shannon when I was a reviewer, like a book reviewer on my blog years ago. So I don't really love Priory of the Orange Tree, like it was okay, and her writing style is just not my thing, but I can't get rid of this. You can't sell arcs, and it's personalized to me and it's a memory. So am I going to be keeping this? Probably. So does that mean I'm going to be keeping the Bone Season books? At least for a while. Probably. Okay, to get right up in the corner, we've got obviously the rest of my Brandon Sanderson books down here. Well, the rest of the white ones. I have a lot of his other books in different editions stored elsewhere, but I will show you later. I've got pretty much my prized possession of Name of the Wind because it's got the beautiful stained pages and it's also signed. So I think that will go in my grave with me. In the very, very back here, I've got my Red Rising books. I'm just going to pretend that it has remained a trilogy and it can live in the corner in the dark until I end up remembering it again and deciding that I want to do another reread. These books in the corner here are going to be an unhaul, so let's not talk about it. Moving slightly up in the world, we have some more science fiction and fantasy up here. We've also got a 3D printed little Timmy or Tommy from Animal Crossing. I love Animal Crossing. Dave printed this for me and he sits on his little leaf. So he lives back there. One of the several books on this shelf that I don't think I'll end up keeping is Foundryside. So even though my unhaul pile lives on this shelf in the corner, this one has remained on my bookshelf because as you can see, I've got some space. So I'm not pressed for space yet, which is why this has stayed so far. The writing just was a bit lackluster for me, and so was the pace of the stories. So it was quite popular, but not one that I absolutely loved. I think I gave it 3 stars. If you're also wondering why the 2 Broken Earth books here don't have the first book, it's because I lent out the 5th season like more than 5 years ago now, and I have not got it back. And it's past the point where I can ask for it back as well. Maybe I'll buy the 5th season again in the future to restore my collection, because out of this shelf, I would say read the 5th season because it's a dystopian fantasy story and it's a 5 stars, it's fantastic. And that would be my recommendation, and ironically, I don't have it to show you. Actually, this one is also fantastic. It's probably my most favorite post-apocalyptic story ever. It doesn't have zombies in it, but it's a post-apocalyptic survival story. So I think if that's what your jam is, if that's what your enjoyment is, read this because it is not talked about enough and it should be. I've read the sequels, they're not as great, they're more like companions. Leave them alone, just read this one, you will not be disappointed. Actually, speaking of disappointment, the Wayward Children's books are probably going to be unhauled as well at some point because I decided, I think in my January to be read or wrap up this year, that I'm not going to continue. I think I read book 8 and it's just not doing it for me anymore, so I'm going to get rid of these as well at some point. They're portal fantasies, they're really short novellas, so they're great for a reading goal, but they're just not ones that I want to stick with anymore. And then scooting along to this shelf here contains a lot of my 5-star favourite sci-fis, so go and read all of the books on this shelf. Becky Chambers in particular is a favourite author, and if she doesn't come out with something new soon, I'm going to cry because she's such a fantastic writer and she just gets the depth of character and culture and interaction so nuanced and niche, and I just need more from her ASAP. As soon as I start reading a book, I already need the next thing from her. I also really struggled with where to possibly shelve this because I kind of shelve by colour and also mildly by genre, and this one has a very brightly yellow spine, but it's a dystopian story. And again, it's post-apocalyptic and it doesn't really have zombies in it, but it's got people who are severely drug affected, so they may as well be crazed humans. So I was like, oh, maybe I could shelf that with Book of the Unnamed Midwife on this shelf, but that book is like a green-grey and this one is fantastically bright yellow, and I thought, okay, the vibes don't match on the spines. Now, I won't spend too long on this shelf because it's only got 1 series on it, so we've moved along slightly from my favourite sci-fis, and we are now into the Wolfsong series, or the Green Creek series rather. I always say the Wolfsong series, that is not correct. And this is my favourite urban fantasy werewolf series because it's just so found family oriented and it's fantastic, and I gave all of them 5 stars and all of them have made me cry. There is Raven Song, book 3 as Heart Song, and the 4th and final book, Brother Song. all of them made me cry, but this one made me cry especially hard. And it was ranked my top book of 2024. The Will of the Many was a close contender to my favourite book, but if I hadn't read the conclusion to a series, the start of a new series would have been my favourite of 2024. Now, these Robin Hobb books are a new addition to these bookshelves. These top ones used to be blank, and because they felt so empty and sad, I decided to put all of my Robin Hobb books on the top, so you are in for a treat. This is the last set of series, so I've started at the end by accident just because it made more sense to go up from Wolf Song. But this was a series that really held up, and like Brother Song, the last book in this whole series, I was up until 2 a.m. reading this and bawling my eyes out, and it was the best ending I could have hoped for. I'm really going to struggle with taking all of these off the shelf. So for argument's sake, here is books 1 and 2. Book 3, book 2 just took a nosedive. So thanks for that, now being bent on the cover. But book 3 I'm currently reading, so it is not on the shelf right now. And I am continuing my reread of this series. After this series, I plan to read the Live Ship Traders. So if you want to start with Robin Hobb, I would recommend the Farseer trilogy and then going into the Live Ship Traders after. They do follow different characters, but they're set in the same world. So if you want to start with Live Ship and then read Farseer, you can do that as well. But technically those are both the beginnings of Robin Hobb. So those are your entry points. Now I do have duplicates of Robin Hobb. So these are some anniversary editions with some slip cases, and how pretty are they? I think they've got illustrations in them as well, but I haven't flicked through them in a while, so I don't remember. They just remind me of being in an actual fantasy library. Like, doesn't that look like something you would find in a library archive in a fantasy novel, like in a castle? The rest of the books on this shelf are advanced reader copies, except for this mass market paperback of Shaman's Crossing. And embarrassingly, I started this like 10 years ago and then put it down and never tried to continue. And I think that's because this character is so unlikable. And I know that Fitz is an unreliable narrator, so he's kind of unlikable as well, but for some reason I just love Fitz and I love that story, and I did not connect to this one, but I keep it around in case I actually want to go back and try this series someday. It's completely unrelated to all of the Realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb, not related to anything Fitz and Fool or Live Ship Traders or Rain Wilds. It's completely separate. So will I read this someday? I hope so. The last bit of this bookshelf tour at the very top is really hard for me to get the camera and the microphone happening while also showing you stuff. So here is an overall snapshot. It contains basically all the Dresden books that I've got. A random sword I used as a Geralt cosplay when I went as the Witcher to some Comic-Con. A little owl in the corner that my friend Marie made me, and a Thor hammer because why not? And then a painting I did of my dog when I was like 15. So there's a bunch of cool stuff up here, and it just collects dust really because it's not in frame on my videos. So now you know what is up there above my head. This is where the rest of my Brandon Sanderson books live, on my little cabinet on the opposite wall to my bookshelf. And believe it or not, this isn't my only Brandon Sanderson stuff. On this shelf, I'd probably say Warbreaker is my standout favourite, and it's a good starting point if you want to try Sanderson as well. It's a standalone. Eventually it will have a sequel, but it wraps up basically in this book, so you don't need to worry about there being a pending sequel in the distant future. This one is great to sink your teeth into if you want to try his writing style. I told you there was more, didn't I? I've zoomed out a little bit so you can see that this is kind of like a cabinet with drawers and stuff, and on top I've stacked some books, but below I've also stacked some books in one of the open cavities, so that is one of 2 open cavities that contains the rest of my Sanderson collection. And then lastly, please forgive this awful angle, it's the best I could do, but here is a bunch of Sanderson stuff. Behind Sanderson, I've got some Joe Abercrombie that I've shoved in here as well. I have loved Joe Abercrombie's books, more so on audiobook and more so the first ones of the trilogy, the first Law. I did really love A Little Hatred, and that's why I have the hardcover, but it got to a point where the series didn't end very well, or it just felt the ending didn't quite do the series justice, I'm not sure. So I didn't end up buying the rest of the book. So this is kind of on there as a memento that I read and enjoyed the first one, and I did end up finishing the series, but I don't have the rest of them to show for it. I also have The Final Empire over here in this pretty edition, and I've got a map of Luthadel, which is the city in Mistborn. I have no idea where I got that from, but it now lives in the book, because I don't know where to put it up in my study or my house. And there you have it. That is the whole tour of my books in my study, mostly Sanderson tiered at the very end, but I didn't want to put them all behind me so that the books I'm showing behind me represent the different authors that I like and my reading taste. But I'm really hot now. It took a long time to film. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Leave a book in the comments if you saw it on my shelf and you liked it, or it's on your TBR, or you've read it. Thank you again so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.